I'm just about to hop on a virtual call with my doctor to go over my GI map results. So this is a gut test we did a few weeks ago and got the results back. There were some abnormal results on there. I'll put up a screenshot of the actual results here. So the ones that were high, there was a lot of stuff that was totally good and in the normal range, which is great. But then there were a few things in the bacterial phyla category that were quite high, and then there were a few things in the dysbiotic and overgrowth bacteria. I don't know what these specific ones mean or what it means we do with this, like if it's a sign of anything in particular, if it's sort of like not that big of a deal, I'm not totally sure. So that's why we are getting on a call to discuss these results, and I'm very curious to see what she has to say. My internet is not working, so that would be bad timing. Oh, this is really bad timing. Okay, I might have to pivot and use my phone.
Hey, do you want to chat about your GI map results?
Yeah, finally something shows up on there.
I know, right? I must admit I was a little bit like, yes.
I know.
Part of me was like, what the hell? Because I feel like if there's anything you've been doing, it's been like doing gut work, and so a part of me is like, well, this is interesting. So, good news, no bacterial pathogens, no parasitic pathogens, at least not right, no crypto, entamoeba, giardia, no viruses, that's great. Okay, but the Pseudomonas and the Morganella, I'm like, especially if they're elevated, I should probably treat that. Then you've got this Endolamax and the entamoeba. Like, they're not in the red, they're not like frankly elevated, but they're not nothing. And generally speaking, this section right here, we prefer to have nothing's detected. I think we could talk about treating them. There were no worms though, that's great. So that's good. Your GI like your digestive markers were actually okay. Everything actually looks pretty good, except for these other bugs that are showing up. And I think for next steps, I mean, let's talk about it and kind of see, one, how you're doing, what you have the bandwidth for, what are your plans moving forward for the next month or two in terms of travel and stuff, because I think that'll all impact what we do next. If we're gonna do this, I want to take advantage of the possibility of like then publish it. It's more meaningful if I can like publish something. So I think right now I'm a little bit hesitant to start you on a definitive plan for this prior to this next round of testing. I'll keep an eye out for the heavy metal result, and then I'll let you know kind of a couple plan of actions for you to choose from. Okay?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was pretty interesting, and we don't have like a specific plan at the moment. As you may have heard, what we're going to try to do is kind of repeat some of the testing almost for like research purposes, because one of my questions always, especially with a lot of these tests that we've done, is like how, not only how accurate are they, but like for me personally, if I were to do, 3 or 4 of these GI map tests on different days over the course of a few weeks, like would I get different results? And there are also obviously other tests you can do that provide similar analysis, and things, other tests that my doctor has used in the past. It can be sort of hard sometimes to know like which testing company might be quote unquote better or have different sensitivity levels on their testing and all that kind of thing. So what my doctor proposed was, if I'm willing to do it both for my own information on what's happening for me, but also kind of as something that she could potentially publish as research so that other people can look at it and kind of gain knowledge from this information, is to basically send in 2 samples to 2 different labs kind of at the same time to compare both within the lab and across labs, if that makes sense. So like I would send in 2 samples to one company and 2 samples to another company, and then see both the differences between the 2 testing facilities, but also like if I send 2 samples to the same company, do they come up with the same results from that sample? Or if they're showing major variations, that's kind of a red flag. So it'll help us kind of like interpret the results a little better, and also see if different labs come up with different things on the test results. But also just looking at the results that we have so far and some of the bacteria or parasites that kind of showed up in those test results. Is there anything we want to do to try to treat those? I guess I should say we do want to do something to try to treat those. She's going to come up with a plan or a couple of options for different plans, and then I can kind of decide which one I want to move forward with. This is something that I really appreciate about this doctor, is that she's very conscious of not like throwing everything at me or like telling me what to do, but letting me be part of the process and understanding that I'm like already doing a lot of things on a daily basis, keep moving forward and healing and all of that. And so if she were to just propose something that felt super overwhelming and I don't want to do it, like that's not very helpful. So she always offers to kind of give me a couple of different options and then like let me choose which path I feel like is going to be most manageable for me. So she's going to come up with a few different plans for how we could potentially treat this and kind of do some of the continued testing to compare and get that process started. And then in the meantime, while she's getting that figured out, I also have to do my heavy metals testing. So that I'm kind of prepping for over the next few days, because I do have to do a few things ahead of time to be ready to actually do the test. So for one thing, I have to remove any non-essential supplements or medications for a couple of days. They just basically don't want you to do anything that might impact the test in some way. And then I end up doing 2 urine samples for this heavy metals test. The first one is what they call the unprovoked sample. So just literally like peeing into a cup and sending it off. And they analyze that for like, what are you excreting in terms of heavy metals right now? Like without doing any kind of intervention, what is just kind of coming out of your body on a daily basis? So that's the first sample. And then after I do that first sample, I start to take a couple of different chelating agents. So these are supplements or medications that help bind to metals in your body and sort of pull them out, so that if you have heavy metals that are more stored in like your soft tissues and bones, it can really get stored in the body that way, that it's really hard then to get it out unless you actually have some kind of agent that is grabbing onto it in your body and helping you flush it out. So over the next few days, I'll start taking some of these medications that will be binding to metals in my body. And then after I do that for like 3 days, day of the what they call the provoked testing, I also will take another medication that is a really strong binding agent. You basically take like kind of a big dose of it, and then over the next 6 hours, you collect all of your urine and then you send in that sample. And basically that is then testing what happens when you purposefully try to grab onto any metals in your body and then test what is coming out. In the past, when I've done these heavy metals tests, my unprovoked sample has looked pretty normal. Like nothing really shows up in terms of like, am I excreting heavy metals from my body right now? Doesn't seem to be an issue, which is good. Probably means that I'm not being exposed, at least on high levels, in my day-to-day life. But when I've done the provoked sample, where I take these binding agents and then collect a sample over the next several hours, that's where I've shown really, really high levels, particularly of lead and mercury in the past, like off the charts high, which tells us that lead and mercury is being stored in my body. Whether that has happened over a long time, it's really hard to say, or like where that's coming from, not totally sure. But in any case, there is very high levels of these heavy metals in my soft tissues or in my bones or in places where it can get stored in the body. And then the only way really to get it out is to, like I said, grab onto it, let it bind to something, and then excrete it out. So that's kind of the process to do this. Do the unprovoked sample first, take some of these binding agents, and then do the provoked sample. I will send all of those in. We'll wait to get the results back so we can see what shows up. And like I said, since I've done this test previously, it was several years ago the last time that I did it, and I've been doing some things to support detox specifically since I got my sauna a few months ago and have been using that really regularly. Curious to see if there's any change in those levels, particularly in the provoked sample. And then again, once we get those results back, we will kind of come up with a plan for, do we need to address this, and go from there. So I'm really interested to see what that test shows, and we'll be getting that sent out in the next few days. It is freezing outside, but it's the first time we've seen the sun in days. Good morning. It is early on Wednesday morning. It's a little after 6 o'clock. And yesterday I sent off the first test for my heavy metals testing, which is the unprovoked test. So that's just like I was saying before, basically you send out a urine sample that is just what you are excreting from your body right now. Are there any heavy metals in that? It's kind of a way to show if you are getting currently exposed to something in your environment or your food. So I sent that one off yesterday, and then I have a couple more days that I have to basically prep to do the provoked testing, where we're basically trying to pull out any heavy metals that might be stored in my body and see what we find there. So part of that is taking a couple different medications over a few days that start to like pull that stuff out a little bit. So I took the first dose right after I did the unprovoked sample yesterday as the initial dose, and then today will be the second dose, tomorrow will be the third dose, and then on Friday I'm going to take the final dose along with another medication, and then the rest of the day Friday, or for the next several hours on Friday, I will be collecting a sample that will then get sent off and will be tested as well, and that one will be more of a sample of what is stored in my body after we've sort of pulled it out of anywhere it could be hiding. So this is EDTA. I can't remember what that stands for, but it is a substance that can help bind to specific metals in the body and help to release them. So this is a substance that you basically take 1 teaspoon on an empty stomach, and you like try to hold it in your mouth for 30 seconds and then swallow. It tastes kind of weird. It's kind of sweet, but it also has a very almost like a spiciness to it, and it upset my stomach a little bit yesterday. I think it's fairly potent stuff. So I'm gonna take my second dose this morning and then get ready to go do my workout. The other part of the prep, I think I mentioned before, you have to kind of stay off of supplements as much as possible. And you're also supposed to just avoid like fish and shellfish for a week beforehand. Again, you don't wanna be like unnecessarily adding in heavy metals that are then gonna show up on this test and maybe give you kind of a false positive or just a reading that is a little bit less accurate. Yeah, it tastes really weird. Sort of gross. Okay, gonna go get ready for my workout now. I had another myokinesthetic session yesterday that was focused on lower body. We also did some PEMF therapy, which I think was really helpful because I woke up this morning with a lot less pain than I've been experiencing lately. I just feel pretty good this morning. I would say my fatigue level is still fairly high. It's been a little higher lately. I don't know if that's because of the change in daylight and just kind of adjusting to a lot more darkness and colder weather and that kind of thing. But physically, I feel a lot better today than I have in quite a while. while, so I'm excited to see how my workout feels today, how I feel afterwards. The trick always is when I'm feeling good, not to push too hard, because it's easy to have a good day and then feel like, oh, I can, do more in my workout or lift heavier weights or just push myself more, and then I kind of end up feeling worse for the next couple of days if I do that. So I want to be mindful that just because I'm feeling good doesn't mean I need to do everything today, but I do kind of want to see if, given the therapy session that I did yesterday, if I feel a little better doing certain movements or doing a lower body workout, and just kind of how it feels without going crazy. All right, it's now Friday morning. I am taking the last doses of medication, and I will be doing my test throughout the day today to send in to get the provoked heavy metals sample. I already took the EDTA, and now I also have to take DMSA. Again, it's got a long name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but this one is kind of interesting because previously when I did heavy metals testing several years ago and I found out my levels were really high, I did go through a couple of rounds of basically what is like the gold standard detoxification protocol. It involves taking DMSA regularly, and then you also take some binders to help you pull the heavy metals out of your body and excrete them. But the problem is that the DMSA is pretty strong, and over time, one of the side effects is that you can develop kind of an allergic reaction to it. So by the time I got to the end of this detox protocol, I started having major a reaction every time I would take the drug, and I couldn't figure out what it was at first, but I would get really, really itchy. Like my whole body would be super, super itchy. I got these little red bumps all over my back that kind of looked like mosquito bites that were also itchy, and it was so uncomfortable. And I finally put two and two together and figured out that it was about 15 to 30 minutes after I would take this medication every morning that the itchiness would come on. It was horrible. So we cut that off. I stopped taking it, obviously, because that's not good for my body to be reacting that way. But when we do these heavy metals tests, you do have to take the drug one time to get that provoked testing. So I'm kind of curious to see if I'm still gonna have the same reaction, given that was several years ago. It's possible that my body has healed a bit or recovered, or maybe won't have such a strong reaction to it, but kind of doubting that. We shall see. I'm going to take this now, again on an empty stomach, and then once I've taken this for the next 6 hours, I collect my sample and then send it off, wait for the results to come back. All right, it's about 6:45 right now, so we'll see in the next little bit how I respond to this. It's almost an hour later, and so far so good. I'm not experiencing the extreme itchiness that I used to when I would take the DMSA. I feel like maybe I feel it a little bit, but it might just be imagining it, and I suppose it could still continue to come on over the next few hours as I really digest the medication, but fingers crossed that it doesn't get really bad. I'm gonna go do a little workout now and see what happens. Okay, it's now been almost 3 hours since I took the DMSA and I'm really not having any reaction to it. I'm not feeling that weird itchiness, and I'm gonna take that as a huge win because I feel like that means that my immune system is not having a reaction to something that it used to have a reaction to, and that, at least to me, signals that some kind of healing has occurred. So I'm really happy about that. I'm taking that as a good sign, and now I just have to finish the rest of this test for the next few hours and send it off. I'm so curious to see what these results look like and how they compare to my previous test.
Welcome to FedEx. This call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance.
Hi, thank you so much for calling FedEx. This is Frank speaking. Oh, yeah, that we're scheduling for a pickup, is that correct, Megan?
Yes.
Great day now, Megan.
Thank
You
you.
deserve it, right?
All right, it's now the end of the day, Friday. I got the test completed earlier this afternoon and got it shipped off. So we'll have to just wait a couple of weeks probably to get those results back. And then depending on what those levels look like, whether there's anything treatment-wise that we want to do moving forward. In the past, because those numbers were so high, it always seemed like that was a big underlying reason for why it was hard for me to make progress. But because it's pretty hard to detox heavy metals and it's a pretty intense protocol, it can be really hard on the body. And obviously, given that when I did it in the past, I got the allergic reaction to the drugs, there isn't necessarily a great way to deal with heavy metals. So I'm hoping that those numbers look at least better this time, but we'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime, today is Friday, Sunday is December 1st, and that will be 3 years since my jaw surgery, which I kind of can't believe, and also seems like, yeah, it's been a while since that happened. But if you've been here since before a jaw surgery or kind of been along that whole journey, I do have kind of a fun video coming up that I'm going to do to sort of commemorate the 3-year anniversary, so keep an eye out for that. And thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you guys soon.